This week's Blame Game is going to go a little less in-depth than usual. I didn't have time to script out my thoughts given the fact that we had a long 4-series weekend and then a quick turnaround time to the next series where, I got off Sunday and then have to go to meetings on Tuesday for the series on Thursday. Anyways, long story short, this will not be quite as scripted, a little bit more free-throwing in my thoughts, but here we go. So the first topic, Luger versus EG. He picked up a lot of hate in the comments for having a pretty poor series, and I gotta say right off the jump that I do agree with that point. There was a number of individual misplays as well as miscoordination with his team in Game 2. It felt like he was just tilted from getting targeted. And then in Game 3, I think that you saw a problem where he looked totally disconnected from his team. I don't understand why he didn't just go after the dragon straight up mid to guarantee that inhibitor and then fight anyone trying to defend it. He leaks out bot lane. And then even though you're trying to get multiple objectives at once instead of just focusing one at a time, once the fight started, he could have tried to run through turret a little bit faster. So I don't know why he kind of made these plays, but then a bad lane assignment gets him killed as well. And it just felt like that he was totally disconnected from the rest of his team in this series. However, I was also feeling a little bad agreeing with this stuff because he had a bad series, but so did almost every member of CLG. Almost all of them played at a lower level than they did in the C9 series, which made that one extra competitive. So initially I was going to push back and say, hey, look at all these good plays in the C9 series, like in Game 2, where he made plays in lane and in team fights to help drag his team to their one win that they were able to pick up in the series and make it look relatively competitive. I think I would have landed on disagreeing with them, given that both these series happened in the same weekend. He had one good one and one bad one. If it wasn't for the fact that a lot of the problems that we saw crop up here are the same problems that we've seen in him in the entire rest of the LCS regular season as well. He is a borderline all-pro-ish level. If he ever had like a particularly good season, maybe he could punch in and steal that spot, But there's a couple big things holding him back. One is his consistency in team fighting. In the Dignitas game, I always bring this example up, but it's just insane to me that they lost this fight after melting through the front line of Dignitas and having the ability to kind of slow play it. He flash ults in and gets himself killed. And that just shows his individual decision making can be highly volatile, but then also his coordination with his team has never quite been in sync. I can't help get this moment out of my head from Palafox where he's talking about Luger just being totally disconnected from the team.
So I'm like looking and I'm just not paying attention to where he is. So this is like my mistake.
Narnia.
Yeah, I don't know where Luger's going. This guy's actually going to Narnia. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking. And then like as I'm ulting, I'm like, someone's like, yo, Lucian's not with us. I'm like, wait, what? Like, what else could we be looking for here?
And it sounded like something that's a pretty consistent problem with them. So these are some areas and reasons why I agree with the criticism, because it's not just like a one-off, he had a bad game in a weekend where he also had a good series. This is something that he has to improve on going forward. Of course, the next topic is going to be 100 Thieves, and both Doublelift and Tenacity picked up a lot of flame in different directions for both of them. And I don't think people are going to find my answer that sexy for what's wrong with this team, but I ultimately think that it is the truth. Now, I have a lot of things that we're just going to fly as I talk here. So for Tenacity, he clearly did not have a very good series versus Golden Guardians. He's been on tank weak side duty ever since that they've kind of picked up their win streak for 100 Thieves, and their playstyle has become extremely linear, one-dimensional, and not just playstyle, but also champion pool. I think that's a big distinction to make, is that you can have a playstyle that you prefer and do better, like scaling, but you should have a lot of avenues and routes to guarantee that you get there in different ways and you can't become extremely predictable, which was not the case. The fact that they saw a closer almost never go topside and Tenacity only played a couple champions meant that Licorice started taking these kind of counter picks into him and really bullying him. Especially in Game 4, they did this map split scenario where it allows Licorice to be split off and just get tons of pressure against Tenacity. And there's really not much Tenacity can do here. You can sack an entire wave and just fall completely out of the matchup. You can force the dive to happen and TP back in, which is what he ended up going for. And then you can see that even though Closer is getting kills for his bot lane and trying to recover top lane as well, the fact that their early game is so bad and they're scaling such a focus means that these ganks don't actually change the lane states. Even though Lulu Zeri, I've seen plenty of times not get that turbo slammed by Lucian Nami this early on. It's usually like turns on a little bit later. Somehow the bot lane is still losing after getting cheese ganked early on. And it's just something where you can see that this team is really struggling in the early game to make any kinds of leads go in their favor. It's not like it was just early game for Tenacity. He did have some struggles in team fights as well on the Gragas, such as this ult here kind of saving 6A when they probably could have knocked him in and killed him if this went well. But again, they're already 4,500 gold down, and maybe this play can help stabilize the game and allow their scaling to kick in. But I don't know. I just don't see it happening. Game 5 for Tenacity was decent. He had 2 matchups that are technically counter picks against him in Gwen and Cassante, and he maybe over-prioritized building MR a little bit, given that they could swap, and that's ended up what happening. And then he has this, a lot of MR built against the Cassante, which doesn't feel great, but he still did fine. And in team situations, he was pretty much always there when his team needed him, ulting in, getting knockups, including this one, which was a pretty critical moment to get his team a kill. And for this situation, for the amount of kills that he and the rest of 100 Thieves were able to grab, the fact that their gold lead was basically imperceptible, I think, falls ultimately a lot more on the veterans of the team. And I guess this will be my thesis for the problem I have with 100 Thieves, is that they just don't coordinate well at all and make each other worse than the sum of their parts. I actually have a hard time individually criticizing anyone, such as Doublelift. While he did have his mistakes in this series, he was also the main reason that they won the games that they won. And Tenacity, while I don't like him being on weak side and permanently just killed over and over again, I don't know how 100 Thieves arrived at that conclusion. It could be that as a rookie, he struggled too much to make plays, went ahead on carries, which is something we did see in the regular season a little bit in the first round robin, where things like his Fiora and Jax games, where he was able to get some kills or get ahead of his matchup, he still ended up dying in team situations by taking bad angles into fights or bad TPs and stuff like that. And this might have been a way to fix that problem. It could also be that Closer's not great at snowballing topside. It could also be that Doublelift can't play weak side. Who knows? There's any number of reasons that they could have landed on this, and it's hard for me on the outside to look in on the problem. But at the end of the day, 100 Thieves 100% should have won this series with the gold lead and kills that they were getting, but their team play was so bad. I want you to look at a number of resets and lane assignments that come through for this team, which is, I assume, the stuff that the veterans are calling out and not Tenacity and Busio. After Dragon Fight, they're missing some ults, so they don't feel like they can properly fight Rift Herald and shove Golden Guardians off of it. I'm not quite sure that's true because Tenacity's ult will probably be back up in time and they should be enough ahead, but either way, they're going to sack this objective. But if they're sacking this objective, why do they bring Tenacity mid here? Because they're grouped up and not actually pressuring, which means Huhi and River can get a free recall and catch 100 Thieves on their following back. After that free recall, then 100 Thieves take their back, and that gives Golden Guardians a window to drop the Rift Herald mid and grab that turret. Then, of course, 100 Thieves, because all these backs are desynced, are able to get their push down mid lane as well. But this is stalling out the game and giving the side of Golden Guardians gold when they shouldn't really be able to get gold. When you're this far ahead with this many kills, you should have snowballed that into more pressure across the map. If you watch side lanes this game, they almost never get any shove going. And it's true that Cassante and Gwen are going to be better 1v1 in the side lane than a lot of the champions. The one time that Bjergsen pushed up and gets kills felt like it scared him from being able to want to pressure like that again. I think the best example of the problems that 100 Thieves were having as a team was 2350 into the game. They're down pressure because they never defend their wards. You can see that Golden Guardians smother them in ward control this entire game, allowing those side laners to do their perma push. Here, when Busio moves in, Closer turns around, and all the wards that he drops immediately get cleared out by Golden Guardians. And so right after that, no one feels comfortable going topside to match the Cassante because they don't know who else could possibly be up there. Even though they just had their support drop all their wards, they never were willing to actually fight or defend anything in this game, it felt like, other than a couple times at Dragon. And so immediately you have both your AD carry and your mid laner mid when there's not really any pressure, and they get another free turret for Golden Guardians. This is something that was consistently happening on the side of the map with Licorice as well, who kept getting chip damage down on turrets and putting a ton of pressure on 100 Thieves. Again, I'm sort of blaming the veterans just because they've been around longer, but again, I don't really know who's making these calls, but you could tell that this is a team that when they're up 10 kills to 3, there's no reason that they should be down this much pressure other than the fact that they never really got proper vision control of the river to make sure that the split pushers didn't feel totally free to split push and they themselves felt comfortable to match, as well as their grouping up windows where they're always just clumped up but not really fighting over anything or pressuring anything in specific. There's a lot of problems that this team had. That's the draft problems. There's all these things that came apart, and I feel bad blaming any one individual player, even though they clearly all had moments where they struggled. This is, to me, a team problem at its core and something that I hope they can fix heading into summer, but we'll have to see. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of the Blame Game. We got finals 2 weeks away in Raleigh. We have one more weekend coming up. C9 versus FlyQuest. Again, feels like a very hot rivalry that's just starting. I can't wait to see the next chapter in it.
Thanks so much for watching that video. I'm going to be heading to Spring Finals, and I hope to see you there. And the whole reason I'll be able to be there is because Alienware sponsors the channel and allows me to do things like go to Spring Finals. So if you're in Raleigh, come by, say hi, and shout out Alienware. And then also go purchase some Alienware products at alienware.com/Travis. Purchase all their products. That, I mean, within reason. Whatever your means are. I'm not trying to get you into any kind of debt, but they got great products. So if you're going to purchase something, just go there. There's a link in the description.